is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Brett Stryker, founder of Traction with Brett, and a certified implementer of the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS. After successfully leading two companies, one of which he built from the ground up and sold to a competitor, Brett decided to turn his experience into a tool for leaders who are ready to stop putting out fires and start gaining real traction in their businesses. Brett, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So where are you calling from today?
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Great. Well, tell us about your journey with EOS worldwide and how do you help entrepreneurs implement the EOS framework?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my journey started with EOS back when I started a business and I was a snack food manufacturing company, ran the business for 10 years. For the first 6 years or so, I self-implemented EOS after reading the book Traction. Eventually decided to bring on an implementer and it completely revolutionized my business. And so after exiting my business, I decided that I wanted to help leaders and owners, founders, investors do the same for their business. So that's what led me to EOS. And I help teams implement EOS by learning more about their business. And most organizations and businesses deal with many of the same pain points. So I get clear on what they're looking to achieve and then help them to scale efficiently and simply and stay aligned on where they're trying to go.
So what do you find are the top challenges founders face in scaling operations? And how does EOS address them?
Yeah, so specifically with founders, I think there's many pain points. I think, there's scaling challenges where growth can outpace systems. There's structure and accountability issues where teams lack role clarity. There's, founders are oftentimes clinging to control, and there's really no playbook to scale. So that can lead to a lot of frustration, a lot of turnover, misalignment, and a lot of founders can't afford full-time executives right at the start. So EOS can help in many ways. First, from a process standpoint, we get all the processes documented. We get clear on the vision of the organization. So everybody top to bottom knows where the company is headed, how we're going to get there. We put playbooks into place so there's predictable execution, and it just really creates team alignment top to bottom. So all issues are on the table. We've got scorecards, so we're tracking measurables, so we're holding people accountable with discipline, disciplined and accountable. And we create team health, so everybody in the organization feels like their voice is heard, and then we can go out and execute on the vision of the company.
Great. Well, you work with startups and mature businesses. What are some of the lessons you learned from implementing EOS in startups that are different from mature businesses?
Yeah, I think, as I've been at this longer haul, I realized that, whether it's startups or mature businesses, many companies still deal with the same things on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of issues going on throughout the organization. When you're an early founder, I always thought that it was just me and my company, but I realized that a lot of companies, a lot of owners and executives, we just we make things too complex. So we need to just simplify everything, slow down, and take the data that we have and figure out how to execute on that vision with the measurables that we have in place. We can start seeing problems and issues long before they become a fire that you have to deal with day to day. So whether you're a small company or you're an established company, it's really just making sure that we have all the right people in the right seats, the right people, fit the company culture. They fit the company culture. They have the skills required to excel at the job that we need them to do. Their roles are crystal clear. A lot of organizations of all sizes, there's a lot of people stepping on each other's toes doing the same job. So we just need to make sure that there's one person accountable. If two people are accountable, nobody is. So, I think that more established companies oftentimes we'll have more resources available to make the changes a little bit quicker, have more people to choose from. Early stage companies, it takes a little bit more work, but EOS works for all sizes.
Okay. And so how do the investors benefit when their portfolio companies adopt a system like EOS? What kind of changes would they expect to see?
Yeah, so I had investors in my business, and I think that chaotic execution, it really risks capital. So, we starting with the vision, we align the leaders on direction and strategy of the company. What scaling chaos reduces valuation. So the scorecards, reveal team health and help us to grow in real time. There's poor accountability a lot of times with teams. So that slows results. And so we use rocks, which are getting crystal clear on 90-day business priorities. So we're moving the business along 90 days at a time with crystal clear priorities. We have scorecards in place with measurables, so we know how we're measuring and managing not only the leaders, but everybody in the organizations. And then we have L10 meetings where the team is meeting every week, drives discipline and accountability and execution. And again, investors really need visibility into the business. And so EOS provides that clear dashboard across the business. And so it all ensures retention, continuity within the business, and just helps the investors feel more comfortable that the business is scaling.
Well, I'm sure you come across a wide range of companies with different sectors, stages, business models, and so forth. And so, what does traction look like across different markets, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, so the nice thing about EOS, which is based on the book Traction, when I was first starting EOS within my own business, I was confused. Is Traction the same as EOS? They're the same. EOS is the operating system based on the book Traction. And so really the traction across the board, really what it is it's an operating system that is really industry agnostic. So what it is it's a system that businesses follow. They figure out the strategy. I help them to figure out what that strategy is, answer the questions. A lot of teams will get in a room, they'll discuss an issue over and over. Rarely do they come up with a plan of attack. So I just help teams combine those questions and issues into one common answer, because at the end of the day, they're the experts in the room. EOS and myself just help them to gain that clarity, focus on the key issues, key priorities when there's a million different things going on throughout the day. So it really doesn't matter what industry. EOS works for any different industry. Again, it's just an operating system to get everybody speaking the same language, share the vision, and know how to go out and execute on it.
Right. Well, why is the culture, vision, and traction align for sustainable growth? What is required to make those three things come together to get the growth you want? What's happening there?
Yeah, well, with culture, vision, and traction, it's really important that we get all of those aligned, because misalignment really leads to turnover. And so by creating those core values, getting crystal clear on the vision, starting with the leadership team and then on down through the entire organization, it really creates that unity, which is that traction, executing on that shared vision with discipline and accountability day in and day out, week in and week out, top to bottom. So if the culture, vision, and traction are not aligned, again, that leads to turnover, that leads to scalability issues, and a very unclear, overwhelmed team.
Great. So, we're seeing a lot of fractional integrators and EOS implementers. What are you seeing there in the field? Is that increasing, and what does it look like?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's increasing. There's a lot of confusion around the difference between an implementer and an integrator. So I'll start there by saying, so an implementer is somebody that is professionally certified by EOS, has gone through the training. And so you can't be an integrator unless you are trained, or I'm sorry, you can't be an implementer unless you are trained by EOS. Integrators, on the other hand, think of them kind of as the COO of the business. The integrator is the one that runs the day-to-day of the business. Now, there's a lot of fractional integrators out there. For instance, when I'm working with a team and realize that they need some help at the leadership team level, there's a lot of great fractional integrators that can come into the business and help them to take what they're doing with EOS and implement it day to day and week to week. So again, integrators are the ones that you would bring on to run the business, whether it's a few hours a week or more than that. But are the ones like me that come in. We meet with the team at a high level. On average, it takes 2 years to fully implement the system. But again, that's the difference. So there's a rise in a lot of fractional industries. There's a lot of people that are fractional integrators. But as far as EOS implementers are concerned, we're growing, but there's only a handful of us around the world.
So the integrator is the internal champion, and I assume that's a must-have for this sort of thing. CEO may say they want it, but if somebody's not daily working on it, it's not going to happen. What do you see there?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So every single organization, especially every single successful organization, has an integrator. Not every organization has a visionary, but the integrator is really the glue that holds everything together. They're the ones that manage the day-to-day. They're the ones that orchestrate the major functions, which are roles in the company. So they're making sure that all the major functions are getting their job done. When companies do have a visionary, typically those visionaries are the founders. They're the big idea people. They're the ones that I like to say they have 20 ideas a week, maybe 19 of them aren't so great, but they're the ones that have that vision. They're the ones that are great at going out and building those strategic relationships and dealing with the higher level, maybe it's marketing or PR. We want those people doing what they're best at. They're typically not best at managing the details, managing the day-to-day, nor do they want to be. So the integrator is really the one that executes on that vision from the visionary and just make sure things get done. The plan that's in place is being executed on, and they're holding people accountable.
Right. Well, I'm sure you see a lot of startups implementing EOS, but what's your advice for startup leaders navigating, say, founder fatigue or team misalignment?
Yeah, well, having been there myself as somebody that was a founder for 10 years and, dealt with a lot of different things, one of the first things that we deal with is, we have a lot of things on our back that we're carrying. And so we need to learn to delegate. And delegate was one of the hardest things I had to do with my own business. And so looking at EOS is something that it's really never too early to start EOS. It will help you to delegate tasks, figure out, do you have the right people in the right seats? If you don't, or if you do, are they doing the job that they're best at, that they love to do? And as you're hitting ceilings, I was hitting ceilings, you hit ceilings on an organizational level, you can hit ceilings on a departmental level, you can hit ceilings on an individual level. And ceilings are just a sign of growth. But what EOS helped me do, and what it helps many, many companies do, is it helps you to break through those ceilings by simplifying things, learning how to delegate, putting the right structure in place. So you know that you have the right people, you're crystal clear on who you need to hire and when you need to hire them. You've got a proven system in place with clear, simple processes, so you're not creating a 700-page SOP manual. And then you're just crystal clear, and so you've got a clear roadmap on how you're going to grow. And one of the best things is that it really helped me to get clear on what the issues are that I needed to solve. Issues in the EOS speak isn't necessarily a negative connotation. It's just anything that's on your mind, good, bad, thoughts, challenges, opportunities. We're getting those out of your head onto an issues list. The entire team is using the same issues list. So then you can start prioritizing what are the most important issues or challenges or opportunities we want to take advantage of, and then focusing 90 days at a time on how you're going to go execute on those, executing on what we call rocks, those 90-day business priorities. Again, because when everything's important, then nothing's important. So we focus on the priorities 90 days at a time, and then every 90 days we reevaluate and go execute on the next 90-day priorities.
Well, you implement a lot of EOS projects. When you walk into a new project, what characteristics do you see that says this is going to be a successful outcome and this is going to be a lot of fun?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that having been doing this for a while now is, first of all, teams need to know that they need the help. They need to know that they have to want the help. I've worked with team in the past where there's a lot of know-it-alls. That makes it difficult. One of the things that we really practice with EOS is open, honest vulnerability. If you're not vulnerable with yourself and those around you, you're not really having those real conversations and being open to the possibility that maybe you're wrong or maybe that you need the help, then it's not so much fun to work with teams like that. So the most important thing is that teams need to know that, or need to want the help. They're willing to be open, honest, and vulnerable with themselves and their team, and they're looking to grow. So those are the teams that I like to work with. That's who EOS is best for as well.
Great. And when CEOs kick these projects off, I assume it comes from the CEO because it's a commitment of the whole company in some ways. What is the role of the CEO after they kick it off? It seems like there's internal champions that are, controlling the process. But what should the CEO be doing through this process?
Yeah, so the CEO is just as important as everybody else on that leadership team. So, of course, the CEO is typically the final decision maker, but it's always best if they get buy-in from the team. Now, you don't make decisions, with consensus, you make the final decision, but it helps when the entire team is bought in. And then from there, when you start the process, the CEO is involved with the leadership team in EOS day to day, week to week. It's just helping everybody be crystal clear on their roles. So the CEO doesn't necessarily have to do everybody else's role. So again, they're as involved as everybody else on the leadership team. And the integrator is really the one that executes on that. So if people on the team aren't executing on EOS or doing what they need to do, we're looking to that integrator to really make those tough calls, hold people accountable. And so the CEO is, the final decision maker. They're a lot of times they're the leader that recognizes, okay, we need this, we're going to do this, but they need to be just as bought in as everybody else.
Right. And so I often find in projects like this that what you think is going to be the work is not really the work. What you end up doing is something else. Is that true here? Do people come with misconceptions about what they're going to do and find out they're going to be doing something else?
Sometimes yes,
Mm.
sometimes no. I think one of the things I run into a lot is people are really confused. What is EOS? Is it a SaaS system? Is it online? Is it another program? The answer is no. It's an old school method, pen and paper, outside of the office, where you're focused on working on the business rather than in the business. And then what it is that it's just having weekly meetings with using what we call an L10 meeting. So you're following the same agenda week in and week out. You're staying on track. So you're limiting a lot of discussions. Myself, when I had my business, I think a lot of people can relate to this, is we don't want more meetings, yet we don't know how to have less meetings. So EOS really helps you to have less meetings by having a really disciplined approach that you're following week to week. So what EOS is it's not something that's online, it's an operating system. It's creating a clear vision with clear priorities on how you're going to go execute on that. It's creating a common language. A lot of times I'll work with teams where some will call it demand generation, other people will call it leads. So we just got to be speaking the same language, because as we're growing, we got to make sure that top to bottom, everybody is saying the same thing. So, Hal, to answer your question, yeah, people a lot of times think it's this complex system, but it's really, I like to say that it's simple, but it's not easy. It's a system that helps you run your business. That where it can be difficult and not easy is that holding each other accountable, being very disciplined to follow the system, and then having the belief that it works because it really does.
Right. Well, I used to work at a company where they use meetings to kind of keep everybody on track. And everybody had recurring meetings. And oftentimes the leader would come to me saying, I don't have anything for the meeting. What do you have? What can we do? And I said, I don't have anything, but yet we would have the meeting anyway. What do you see? How much meeting time can you save if you have a proper implementation of EOS?
Well, that really varies with the team, but you can significantly reduce meetings. So using the L10 meeting agenda is something that teams do every single week. It's about 90 minutes, and we start with just the leadership team. So when we're implementing EOS, we implement EOS only at the leadership team level to start. So we get the teams to feel very confident in EOS and feel to a point where they have mastered the tools, and eventually they roll out EOS to the organization. So when we start with the leadership team, we really focus on that L10 meeting agenda. So what that is you're going through your scorecard. A lot of people call it KPIs, your measurables, things like that, to make sure that you're hitting your weekly leading indicator weekly action-based numbers week to week. You'll be able to start seeing trends and patterns develop. So what happens is you can lessen meetings right then and there, because when an issue becomes a fire, you have multiple meetings and you're trying to figure it out. But just in the scorecard part of the L10 alone, you're able to see what's going to happen long before it takes place, and you can solve it right then and there. You're also reviewing your rocks in this meeting. So you're simply saying, are we on track? Are we off track with each rock? If we're on track, so each leader on the team has a rock or a couple rocks that they own. And that's that 90-day business priority. So if the leader is already on track with hitting that priority by the end of the quarter, there doesn't need to be a discussion. If they're off track, we bring it down to the issues list so we can discuss and solve it right then and there, again, leading to less meetings. And then we're also looking at our to-dos. Those are the action-based steps from the last week. 90% of them should be done every week. So, and then we're going through issues that's where we're spending 60 of our 90 minutes actually solving issues, setting them up, knocking them down, making them go away forever. So solving issues right then and there will also lead to less meetings as well. So there's a whole bunch of ways it can lead to less meetings.
Great. And how do you measure success with EOS? What are the metrics you look at?
Yeah, so there's many ways to measure success with EOS. One of the things that we do when we first start with EOS is we really do what's called an organizational checkup with the team. So it's more subjective than objective, but it's getting a pulse on multiple categories within the organization. So how is team health? How is alignment on the vision? How is discipline? And how is holding people accountable and things like that? And so we start there. And so on the very first day, we're taking a look at, okay, where are we starting? And then throughout our sessions, we're always looking back and reevaluating as a team to show that progress that we make. And so there's a lot of ways to measure that. There's myself, when I implemented EOS in my company, we doubled our revenue within the first year. So that's one way that I noticed it. There's teams feel more aligned. They feel like they're being heard and they're clear on the vision. And a lot of teams say that they've never had better communication, and that happens quickly. So that's another way you can measure it. So again, multiple ways to measure it. There's no one size fits all, but we do measure it quarter by quarter to see how teams are doing and improving.
Great. Well, tell us more about your personal mission in empowering entrepreneurial leadership at scale with EOS. What is that all about?
Yeah. So again, having been a founder who built a business and exited, I I I know the challenges. I know how difficult it can be, and I know what EOS did for my organization. So as an EOS implementer and an executive coach, I love helping teams to simplify their business, figure out what's most important, and then I love seeing them succeed. And I myself at first not believing that it really can work like that, and having lived what it did for my business, there's nothing more exciting and fulfilling than working with with leaders and owners, founders to help them do the same. And then having had outside investors and things like that is I know how impactful it was for them. I had an investor of mine early on say, Brett, we've never seen such a well-oiled machine for a company of your size. And at the time, he didn't know it was EOS, but that gave my investors clarity in the business, comfort in how it was scaling. So I also love working with portfolio companies or family offices or private equity firms because I can really help their portfolio companies gain alignment so they can feel comfort in that as well. So I love what I do. It was so impactful for me in my business, and I just love seeing the impact for my clients as well.
Great. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
Yeah, I think that if I'm listening to your podcast as an owner or somebody as an investor, it's never too early to at least have a conversation about EOS. I suppose the only time it's too early is if you're still in that very early startup mode where you're not sure what your product niche is or if you have a market fit. Then this isn't right. But if you know your product, if you're starting to grow, it's never too early to have a conversation. I pushed back a long time when I was running my company because I thought it was too early. Or as a founder, I didn't love the idea of having to lay out everything for my team to see and them holding me accountable. I also didn't love the idea of process. I felt like that would really stifle my ability to really think outside the box and move quickly. And what I realized is that by having those processes, it actually allowed me to work outside the box, move even faster because we had processes in place to allow everybody in the organization to do the job that they were best at. So I was able to delegate and do what I was best at. So my answer is that it's never too early to have a conversation. I'd be happy to talk to you. EOS can work wonders, and I'll be open and honest with you. If I think it's too early, I'd be more than happy to talk as well and offer any advice if it's not the right time.
Great. So how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Yeah, so the best way to go about reaching out to me is you can email me, brettstryker@gmail.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, brett.stryker@EOS worldwide. But feel free to email me, LinkedIn, and then I'm sure there's probably going to be talking points in this as well, where you can find me.
Great. We'll include your contact details in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Thanks, Al.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.